May the words of my mouth and the meditations of each heart be holy and acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Well, I just discovered a little surprise somebody left up here for me this morning. So I'm loved, you know what I mean? So thank you for whoever this was. It's going to be gone in like 2 days tops, I guarantee you. It seems I must do something here today. I am to share some words with you, as the church has shared them for approximately 2,000 years. How you are going to receive these words, I don't know. That's not my assignment. I don't believe I can persuade you through the methods of historical critical research or scientific inquiry. Others might have such gifts, but not me. Nor is it part of my assignment to rouse the gathered through desperate emotional ploys. I dare not belittle your intelligence in such a way. Besides, Episcopalians are as weary of emotional sermons as they are weddings without open bars. They are strange words to hear, I understand, and for some of us, unbelievable. That I also understand, as I've never had enough faith to move mountains, and only on occasion do I muster enough to change the shifting sands of my own heart. Nonetheless, today I must share these words, and those words are, at the break of dawn this morning, God raised from the dead Jesus of Nazareth. Now, before you start twitching in your pews uncomfortably, there might be some comforting news to go with this. It seems you can hear these words in ways that meet you where you are and when the time is right. Sometimes you can hear those words as a proclamation. For the two women at the tomb, those words came in such a way, not only that, an angelic proclamation. They came to the tomb to grieve, but were met with the words, I know who you came to see, but he is not here. He's already down the road. If you run now, you might be able to catch him, and you need to go tell the others. Talk about a proclamation. It's remarkable. But most of us haven't heard those words in such a dazzling proclamation. In fact, I think most of us would shudder at the thought. I imagine many of us would agree with Emily Dickinson when she wrote, "The truth must dazzle gradually, unless every man be blind." But that first Easter morning, there was nothing gradual about it, and those two Marys were the first to take those fateful words to the others. Peter, James, John, listen, you're not gonna believe this, you're not, but at the break of dawn this morning, God raised from the dead Jesus of Nazareth. Sometimes we hear those words like an announcement, cutting through the noise, whether it be the noise in our heads or the noise around it. Announcements are tricky, though. They don't always work. Those of us who work in the life of the church know this. You can put an announcement about the youth spaghetti supper on Wednesday in bold letters in the bulletin. Stand among the congregation during announcements and say, don't forget about the youth spaghetti supper this Wednesday. Then while you're offering the blessing, say a private prayer. God, please help them to remember this Wednesday, the youth spaghetti supper. And invariably, somebody in the line after the service will say, are the youth having their spaghetti supper this Wednesday? Speaking of spaghetti, there was Cornelius, a Roman soldier, and a slew of others slurping their spaghetti and carbonara, biting off chunks of bread and guzzling wine. People talking loudly and laughing, but Cornelius, he's hungry for more than what's being passed around the table. And there's Peter. And Peter's breaking all the rules. He's not supposed to be eating with Gentiles. He shouldn't be eating with a bunch of rowdy Italians. But that's where the Spirit of God led him. And over the noise at the table and in his own questioning mind, Cornelius not only hears the announcement, He responds to it, and his whole household is baptized because Peter said the words, "They put him to death by hanging him on a tree, but God raised him on the third day." Which is just another way for us to hear today at the break of dawn this morning, God raised from the dead Jesus of Nazareth. Other times, we can only hear those words in our own brokenness. No proclamation, no announcement, just a ringing in our ears when we're at the end of our rope. Have you ever been at the end of your rope? I'm reminded of the words of old St. Paul, who often found himself at the end of a rope, perhaps many times a rope of his own making, because I think Paul the Apostle spent most of his life trying to surrender Saul the Pharisee to Jesus. And some of the last words he wrote to his dear friends in Philippi while looking back on his weathered life were, "I count everything as loss because of knowing Jesus, my Lord. For his sake I have suffered the loss of all things in order that I may gain Christ and be found in him." Let me ask you a question. How can one who suffered as Paul, cast about on the seas of heartache and pain, shipwrecked, clung to the rock that is the grace of God, suffered all that, and yet in his last days, he sees it as this great mercy in his life? How is such loss transformed? Or how does someone like John, exiled to the island of Patmos, the Roman army bringing the weight of its sword against the church, mothers, fathers, children, grandchildren, old people, young people, rounded up, executed, thrown into prison. And there sits John one Sunday morning, refusing to bow his head to Caesar, and instead lifts his face to the heavens, and he's given a revelation. And he writes to the church, "Fear not, fear not, send the messengers out. Spread the news among the people. Rome isn't rolling out our funeral pall. It's the cloth for the banqueting table, the supper of the Lamb, and there will be rich food and hearty drink and laughing and dancing and no more heartache and no more pain, and every tear will be wiped away because death has already been defeated. Victory belongs to those who have surrendered to the love of God." Where does he get the courage, the gall to say such a thing? I think it must have something to do with those words. They aren't just any words. They are the words that have shaped a people and still do. How are you going to receive those words today? I don't know. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. As I said, that is not my assignment. My assignment is to simply share them. St. Andrews, did you hear? Did you hear? At the break of dawn this morning, God raised from the dead Jesus of Nazareth. Amen.